the picture that you see behind me is actually my hometown or my home city. It's Prague, Czech Republic, Prague. That's where I was born many moons ago. And my name is Dagmar. Hello to you all out there who are watching. And I want to talk to you a little bit about us moving into this golden era of 5D and the subtleties of spirit. One of the big things about 5D is really us connecting more with our spiritual self and disconnecting from our need on the external and material stuff. And so I'm wondering, how are you doing? How are you doing with listening and hearing spirit and following spirit? You know, so many people are sometimes disconnected from spirit, and I was there many years ago. It happens as a result of living life and experiencing pain and trauma. We tend to disconnect from our spiritual selves. And we've been living in separation for eons, for many, many lifetimes, you know, separate from our spiritual self and very much in the density of the 3D world, of the physical stuff. And now we're shifting all that, right? So how are you doing with connecting with spirit and listening to spirit and following its guidance? Because I don't know if you realize, but your higher self, your spiritual self, is really a true north compass. And it's the best guide you'll ever have. And I was just talking to my mom yesterday. In fact, we call each other every Sunday. And, you know, we're talking about those subtle messages we sometimes get. And I was telling her about how I have a water filtering system here at home where I filter my water. And twice now in the last couple of months, I got this thought in my head about getting a water filter before, you know, this one quits on me. I mean, this one's all, you know, done and dirty. You got to replace it, right? And so you should have another one on hand before you before that one is like needs to be replaced. And twice I had that thought in my head, right? And each time I didn't listen to it. I didn't follow it. I didn't follow through on it, you know, because of, you know, other things. I had more important things to do and so forth. And all of a sudden, the other day, there it was. I needed to replace it. It started beeping at me. I couldn't use the water anymore. And so I'm like, holy crap. I should have really listened to that message, right? Your spirit is always communicating with you. It's always there guiding you. But the bigger question is, are you hearing it? Are you listening to it? Right? So how many times do we stick our foot in our mouth because we don't listen to it, right? But that is the subtleties of spirit, you know? I mean, yes, sometimes spirit can become very intense and hit us over the head with an iron boot when we over and over don't listen to the message of what we're supposed to be doing. And sometimes, you know, it can be as bad as getting into an accident or more drastic stuff when we are not listening. But when we're grown into the higher vibrations, you know, we tend to listen more, we tend to be more in tuned, and the message just seems to get even more subtle. And so we have to keep getting better at listening to it. And the other aspect is trusting it, because, you know, what's the point of hearing it if we don't trust it, right? If we don't follow through on it. And it's interesting because my mother had a very similar story to mine, and she was, you know, thinking she needs to get some light bulbs before she runs out of the ones she had placed in her lamps because she didn't have any extra ones. And so, you know, lo and behold, all of a sudden, you know, the next day or something, like 2-3 different bulbs suddenly, you know, popped, went out. And so also she didn't listen to it. She didn't follow through on it. So, you know, but those are minor things. Those are small things. And spirit talks to us all the time. Spirit, you know, whether you go to the store, I've had this many times happen to me, and you get this thought of, well, you should get really, you know, instead of just one tomato, you should get 3 tomatoes. And then you dismiss it and you think, okay, well, I don't want to spend that much extra. I just want that 1 tomato. You get home and all of a sudden, lo and behold, you know, want to do this thing and you need 3 of them. How did that spirit, how did spirit know that, right, ahead of time? But it does. And it communicates to you all the time. All right. Even with important things, like, for example, do you get ever a message of, oh, I need to really work with that person. I really could use their help, or I should take that course, or I should do this program because, you know, I really need it. Yeah. And then you talk yourself out of it because, you know, oh my God, I have a car payment. You know, my car is ready to break. I need to do this. I need to do that. And you know, talk yourself out of it and dismiss it. And then, you know, 6 months later, you're like, oh man, I should have really taken that course. Well, you don't even know how life could have benefited you better or differently if you had taken that course, if you had worked with the person, if you had, you know, changed those things about you, you know. And you know, all I can say is just we got to listen to it. It's to our benefit. You know, that voice, that message from spirit is 100% correct all the time. Now, here's the other aspect to the whole thing is, you know, you are also receiving messages from your ego. They're a little bit different, but they're also messages, but sometimes urgent. And sometimes they override your spiritual messages. Because the ego, in essence, is backed by pain, and pain is very powerful, you know, if we don't have it healed. And so it's about our survival. And so those messages are much more overpowering. And so what do? We end up often listening to that, but then it's not in our highest good, you know. Yes, it may help us survive temporarily, but it's really not serving us in the long run, you know. Like, for example, I had an interesting event in my life a few years back where I was actually into cosmetology. I was cutting hair and doing all this cool stuff. I had a studio out of my home. This was years ago, before I even got involved in the spiritual healing aspect of things. And so, you know, I wasn't quite making my ends meet with the money I was making. And so I wanted to buy this salon, and, you know, everything was working out great. I, you know, even got financing for it, and I hit it off with the gals that were working there. I found this beautiful salon really close to my house, and the gal wanted to sell it, and I hit it off with her. Everything was beautiful, except at the very end, the whole deal fell through. And I was devastated because I was kind of counting on it already. And it was going to solve all these issues for me. And, you know, I remember I was so devastated by it. I had these papers, that I stack of papers from research and, you know, going over figures and all this stuff that I had done. I put it on my table, and I couldn't move it for months. I was just emotionally so devastated by the whole thing that it didn't go through. But then years later, I started asking spirit, you know, why did this ever fall through? I mean, it seemed like it really came to me as an answer to what I was looking for. But, you know, the thing was that I was acting from a place of my ego and not from a place of my highest good, from my spirit. So I was listening to my ego, which was guiding me, and that's the wrong thing to listen to. You don't want to be guided by your ego. You want to be guided by your higher self and your highest power that understands the big picture and wants to move you forward. And my highest self, or my highest good at that point, was really, and I didn't know this at the time, that I was going to go into actually healing. that I'm a healer by heart, and I was not even awake to it at that point. And so, you know, I was following my ego and my desire to survive without having the bigger picture or being connected to it and listening to any part of my high self. And so my high self had that whole deal fall through, because that's not the direction I was supposed to, I was meant to go. And it's a good thing that the whole thing fell through, because I don't know, a few months later, I started suffering from a ton of allergies, and it would have been horrific actually working in a salon environment with all these chemicals and stuff. So anyway, just trying to point out to you how important it is for us to, as to what we're listening to, especially if we're moving up into 5D. But so many of us are still disconnected, you know, and need the help to connecting. And sometimes we have to go through the inner work that we need to do to actually find our lost parts of ourselves, and the work we need to do, the healing work we need to do to connect with ourselves, so that we can have a good relationship with the higher self part of ourselves. And sometimes we have to also go through a process of trusting and learning how to trust again. And I can teach you all of that. And so I want to invite you to join me in this amazing system I put together. It's called, actually, you can just type in jointheascensiontribe.com. It's about moving into 5D. It's about disconnecting from the 3D. It's about changing, going through the internal changes you need to go through to really move up into the golden era, to be able to manifest the things you really want, to be able to prime that vibration, in such your vibration, to be able to match that higher 5D vibration, okay? And it takes some work. It doesn't just happen. You know, for those of you who do nothing, you're probably going to stay in 3D because that's what you're used to. That's where you're at. Okay. But for those of you who are ready to move up into that 5D and really making those changes inside of you, I would really highly recommend to join me in this Ascension Tribe. It's a one-year program with me, with accountability, support, guidance, guided healing meditations, and also really learning how to become the authority on your own health, because that's one other place we really, really need to disconnect from the 3D matrix, because that's where they're keeping us, you know, poisoning us constantly, where they're keeping us down in vibration, in fear all the time. And, you know, the one way to do that is tear you down on a physical level, okay, with your health. Because when you have ill health, you know, it's very difficult to rise up in vibration. It's going to keep tearing you down into the space of, you know, either grief, sadness, anger, or fear. All right. And I tell you from experience, okay? And this is where you really need to disconnect. And sometimes it requires to become the authority on your own, you know, health, and really disconnect from that dense 3D system that's kind of trying to keep you sick. And I will teach that. I will help you with that in this whole, you know, one-year program that I have designed. It's like a cocoon where you can actually be nurtured into, you know, becoming that higher part of yourself, or merging with that higher part of yourself, and really connecting with your power. Okay. And that's what we all need to do, you know, to change all of our reality, because that's what it's all about, you know. And 2022 is all about the doing. You know, we've got to get off our butts and we got to do. And sometimes it means doing the inside stuff, because the inside stuff is what's reflected in your reality. And so you've got to change that in order to change your reality, you know. And how many of us know how to do that? See, I've been through that journey. I've been primed into that journey. I've been awakened to all of my gifts from past lifetimes of being a healer and clairvoyant. And I understand this whole thing. And I've been put through some of the most horrific stuff physically to be able to guide you through the process of, you know, coming back into your health, because that's what I've done ultimately. And so anyway, I hope you would join me in the Ascension Tribe, and, you know, let's rise into the golden era, and let's create that golden era world for ourselves, because that is what we're looking to do. So anyway, namaste. I hope you have a wonderful day. I love you guys. Bye for now.